It's that time again, Our Town Live, where friends, family, people you know, and others you'd rather not know share with us their unique bits of wisdom. And now, here's Herb, your host, for another show.
Today, we're going to spend a little bit of time with one of the Juvenile Court judges here in Cherokee County, Judge John Sumner. He was appointed to the Juvenile Court bench in 2001. He's been past president of the Georgia Council of Juvenile Court Judges, served as chair of the subcommittee for foster care code reform, a frequent presenter at national, regional, and state trainings, and served as a municipal court judge as well as judge pro-tem in Superior and State Court. Prior to his appointment to the Juvenile Court bench, Judge Sumner had extensive trial experience in private practice, which included domestic, guardian ad litem, and juvenile court work. He also served as a staff attorney with the University of Georgia. Judge John Sumner. Judge.
I'm a juvenile court judge. I've been serving in this capacity for the last 18 years. I will tell you that when I was in law school, I said two things. I'll never practice family law, and I'll never become a judge. And here I am today.
What was your epiphany?
And it was actually an interesting path that brought me here. I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I was in debate in high school, did very well in school, just always fascinated with the Constitution, constitutional rights, the rule of law, all of that, and had always wanted to be a trial lawyer, really as a way to help people and to be an advocate for the system. So I came out, started my career actually as a public defender. I wanted to be a district attorney, but I couldn't find the right office, and actually found my way to a public defender office, one of the top in the country, and did that for a while. And then I became a staff attorney at the University of Georgia. And then someone had told me that Cherokee County was up and coming in the metro area and small town, but really growing quickly, and it's a great place to get on the ground floor. So I came here and started practicing law and was loving life as a trial lawyer, and things were going really well. And it's just one of those things in life. We had a position come open on the City of Woodstock Court, basically the Municipal Court there. And a friend of mine had said, well, you need to apply for that. And I said, don't you remember? I said I never wanted to be a judge. I'm a trial lawyer. I'm an advocate. And he convinced me, and my very first day on the bench, Herb, I was there, and it was a traffic court, and I come in, there's like over 100 people in the room, and at that point, I'm to explain their rights to them and what they're there for, and what an arraignment is, and how we process the cases, and how their matter could be handled. And I really felt so empowered at that point, because I realized, that as the judge, you do set the tone, and you do see not that just justice can happen in one case, but it can happen in all cases. And as time went by, now I was doing a lot of juvenile work in my practice, and we actually had our full-time juvenile court judge moved up to Superior Court, and I applied for the position and was honored enough to be selected. And that was 18 years ago, and so I ended up doing the very thing I said I'd never do, and my career couldn't have turned out any better. It was the perfect position for me. I'm very blessed to be here.
What factor most contributed to your success in the last 17 years?
I would say I always call it the long view. I try to look at overall what is the goal we're trying to reach here, and not getting caught up in the frailties of the system, because juvenile is a tough area. It's a tough system of law. We have broken people that we're trying to help get back together. It's a broken system. It works many times. At times it does not. And so I think for me, I've always been a patient man. I've always taken the long view, and I've always been a problem solver. So I look at what is the goal and objective here, and what's the best way to get there. Now, that doesn't mean if somebody's not doing their job or the system fails a child, we don't call them out and hold them accountable. For some, though, that's the end of the day. I've held you accountable. I've done my job, and I try to take a system-wide approach and create an environment where everyone who comes into my courtroom, whether they're a CASA, a lawyer, a party, knows that they have a role, and if we all do our job together, the system's built and we follow the rule of law, in the majority of cases, the right thing's going to happen. But I think it's really having patience and enjoying people, and not, you can't look down on people and you can't look up to people. You have to look square in the eyes of everyone and see that everybody's treated fairly. Do that, then you can move forward and you can really serve families and children, which ultimately serves the community.
Would you say you would be considered a fair judge, lenient judge, or a tough cookie?
Well, I haven't asked anyone. I would gather that the word on the street, if you will, would be that I'm a very fair and reasonable, but I do hold people accountable.
What has been your biggest judicial success that you consider really the pinnacle of what you've done so far?
I'll say three things. First of all, of course, the many success stories we've had. We just had one today in court, and basically the system just broke down for these three children, and I just put my foot down, and we started having hearings every month, usually have them every 6 months, every 30 days, holding the department accountable. And now we have a wonderful foster home to adopt for one of the children and for the other two as well. So when we see these successes, that's certainly the greatest career achievement. Beyond that, though, I would say that the two things, first of all, when I was selected to be president of the Council of Juvenile Court Judges, in that position I worked with all the other levels of court, and I got to represent all 150 juvenile court judges in the state of Georgia. And then back in 2007, I actually received an award from a child placement agency, and I was Public Servant of the Year for the state of Georgia. And those are probably the two tops in my career.
Now, there's always the flip side. Tell me about the biggest screw-up you've had as a judicial judge.
Oh, probably in days, a long day where you get in a rush or you're tired and you don't give the cases the extra attention. If I'm tired or exhausted so much I can't at least do the basics on a case, I won't hear the calendar. But probably looking back saying, I took a shortcut on that case. I should have stopped and asked a few more questions along the way. Okay. And I will say, in rushing through orders, because sometimes the workload gets demanding and you get used to making decisions and you can take a shortcut to get somewhere. Not that you're violating anyone's rights, but you're not giving it, you're doing just an okay job instead of really fulfilling what you should be.
If you had to start all over again and had to change one thing, add something, subtract something, what would it be?
With my time as a tenure as a judge?
Anytime.
Well, that's a good question. I would think that I could do anything over, because the first job I took as a public defender was down in Florida. And I'm only the second college graduate ever in my family and the first professional graduate. So I didn't really have, I had to figure it all out on my own. Being an attorney is not as fungible as like being a banker. And it was a disadvantage of me when I came back to Georgia. And I thought I always wanted to be in Georgia. So I think the biggest mistake I made was in my career path going down to Florida. It was a great job, but I should have stayed here in the state. I went to law school at Georgia State, so I should have leaned more on my contacts through school. I would say also at one point in my career, I had rushed into a partnership with an attorney, and it was a disaster. We just were not right to practice law together. Very talented lawyer. We just had different views on the practice.
Right.
And that was a real mess to get to go back through and undo that partnership. And we didn't even have a written partnership agreement. It was all done on a handshake. That's the worst thing a lawyer could do. I didn't even heed my own advice, and it was messy. But we both went our separate ways. So I think in retrospect, those would be the things I would change.
As you practice it, what are the duties of a criminal court judge? If you could just summarize them quickly.
Juvenile court, it's interesting because you hear all this about accountability courts and drug courts and different veterans courts. I always say juvenile court was the first accountability courts. We were the first specialized court. And I've always said that in juvenile court, the main difference is that when there's a judge, when you rule on a case, you're not closing the case, you're actually opening it. And by that, if you're in one of the other courts, someone's found guilty, not guilty, you sentence them. Here's a divorce. Here's my ruling. It's over. In juvenile court, if I rule a family, needs rehabilitation, or a juvenile delinquent needs rehabilitation, or a family needs services to protect their child, we're actually opening the case. And for the next 6 months to a year, we'll be involved with that family. So you have to take on the role of leading the system that's going to help that family rather than just making the decision and moving on to the next case. Because you're not closing the case out, you're opening it.
What challenges do children face in foster care? What are common foster care system problems that you see, that you hear?
Routinely, what I hear from children is the care that they receive while they've been removed from their parents. We have a severe lack of foster homes. We have a lack of foster homes that are prepared for the level of trauma that these children have experienced in their past. Most group homes are well underfunded. There's a lot of staff issues there. And I think the greatest challenge for children is very few of the children that we remove from their parents are being severely abused or neglected. They don't realize they're being neglected. They don't realize they're being abused, but they're not getting hit. They're not getting sexually molested, many of these children. But that's their home, and they don't know it's not a good home. They don't know that they're unsafe, but in some levels they are being loved. Then you put them into a foster home. I think the hardest thing for children is you've removed them from their neighborhoods, you've removed them from their schools, you've removed them from their friends, everything they know, and then you put them into an environment that's probably not prepared for them, and suddenly they're in the house with 4 or 5 other kids that don't want to be there either, or they're in a group home. I saw once there was a film made of a child, and he had been in foster care, I think from like age 8 to as a teenager. And they'd asked him that, and he said, the worst part is that I was just a number. And everything was done at a certain time. Like we ate at a certain time. We all ate the same thing. This was our bathroom time. This was our free time. And he says, I just wanted to have a family. I just wanted to wake up and we eat breakfast and, we go about our day, and they just feel like a number. So that's what's so hard on kids, because they don't know that they're being abused and neglected, the vast majority of them. And you put them in a place which is a lot worse than them. I actually had a young boy. He was only 9 years old, and he had stood up, and I actually have the audio from it. And he made this, he said, I have something I'd like to read. He's 9 or 10, but very bright little boy. And he went on and on about, please don't move me again. I'll promise to obey the rules. If you move me again, I'll have to start over in school. I don't want to be another year behind. I don't have a suitcase. They'll put all my things in a garbage bag. They'll then move me to the next house. I know my parents have drug issues. They are trying to get help, but please don't hurt me by moving me again. It's very moving. And that's the hardest thing for children, is how the system, I think, really lets them down once they enter foster care.
What should foster parents know about court?
That it's a long, complicated process, that we're required to protect the constitutional rights of parents. If we take any shortcuts, it will be sent back by the appellate courts, and we'll have to start all over again. So it is a long, complicated process. Their role is not in the court. Their voice is important, but their voice needs to be expressed through CASA or the guardian ad litems. What they're seeing with the children are important, but their main role is just to provide the best care they can. Foster parents ask me that question routinely, and I say, all I can tell you is, It is a long, complicated process, and you just need to have patience.